She didn't think of herself as lonely. That's the part that matters most. She had a routine. She had her cat, her coffee, her Tuesday morning calls with her sister. She had a small house that she'd paid off slowly, carefully. Over 22 years, she had $74,000 in savings, built over decades, dollar by dollar, from a life of careful decisions. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't naive. She was just quiet. And then, one afternoon in March, a message arrived that she almost didn't answer it. Her name was Carol, 58 years old, retired administrative coordinator, divorced for 11 years from a man she'd rather not talk about. Her kids were grown and scattered, one in Phoenix, one somewhere outside of Seattle. They called on holidays, sometimes birthdays. She didn't complain about it. She had learned long ago that complaining doesn't change the shape of her room, that her mornings had a rhythm. Coffee at 6:47, the news for exactly 20 minutes, then off, because more than 20 minutes made her anxious. A walk around the neighborhood, if the weather allowed. Home by 9, some light cleaning, lunch at noon, an audiobook in the afternoon, dinner alone, usually soup, usually in front of a cooking show she'd seen 3 times before. She wasn't unhappy. She would tell you that directly. She was just accustomed to her own quiet. The Facebook message came on a Tuesday. A man named Robert Callahan. His profile showed a face she didn't recognize. Strong jaw, kind eyes, silvering hair at the temples. 62, according to his profile. Civil engineer. Semi-retired. Currently working a contract in Aberdeen, Scotland. A widower. 2 adult children. A golden retriever named Max. She looked at his profile for a while before she answered. Hi. I'm not sure how we're connected, but I wanted to reach out. Your profile caught my attention. You seem like someone who actually reads. She smiled a little at that. Then she typed back. His first messages were light. Easy. He asked about her reading, what she was listening to, what she thought of it. He had opinions about books too, strong ones. He made her laugh once in the first week, and she noticed that she was still thinking about the joke 2 hours later. It had been a long time since someone had made her laugh. She told her sister about him. Briefly, just someone I'm talking to online. Her sister didn't ask follow-up questions. Carol didn't offer them. By the second week, they were talking every day. He asked her about her marriage, carefully, and she told him more than she expected to. He listened, or at least, he responded in ways that felt like listening. He told her about his wife, Margaret, who had died of ovarian cancer 5 years earlier. He described the last year of her illness with enough quiet detail that Carol cried a little, alone in her kitchen, reading his words on a screen. He wasn't asking for anything. He was just present. And presence, she was learning, was something she had been missing without knowing the name for it. He remembered things. He'd ask how her sister's knee surgery had gone. He'd remember the name of her cat, Biscuit, and ask about him. Small things. Consistent things. He called her Carol every time. Never sweetheart or dear, which she appreciated. He seemed like a man who understood that intimacy had to be earned. She started looking forward to his messages. First thing in the morning. Last thing before sleep. I think about you more than I should, he wrote one night. Is that strange to say? Stared at that line for a long time. Then she wrote back. No. I think about you too. In April, he started talking about the future. The contract in Scotland would be done in June. He'd been thinking about where to go next. He mentioned Portland once. She had mentioned she liked Portland. Years ago, a trip she'd taken with her sister. She noticed he remembered Portland. He talked about restaurants he'd like to try. He asked what kind of food she liked. He talked about long walks, about going to bookstores, about quiet Sunday mornings. He painted a picture, carefully, brushstroke by brushstroke, of a life that sounded a great deal like the life she had been living alone. Except In his version, there were two of them. She didn't say this out loud, but she started quietly to hope. It came in the second week of April. Almost gentle. He'd been having some difficulty with the bank transfer for his contract payment. He explained. The international wire from the Scottish firm was stuck in processing because of an account verification issue. He wasn't sure how long it would take to clear. His hotel bill was due. He was embarrassed to ask. He made that clear several times. The embarrassment, but would she be able to help with a small bridge? Just until the wire cleared, which he expected within the week. He mentioned an amount. 400. She hesitated. Not long, but she hesitated. And now, looking back, she knows exactly when it started. She thought about it for almost an hour. She told herself she was just being tearful. She went back and read their conversations from the beginning, all 6 weeks of them, looking for something that felt wrong. She didn't find anything. He had never asked for anything before. He had given her more attention, more genuine warmth than anyone had in years. She sent 400 through a wire transfer app she had to download for the purpose. He thanked her with more warmth than seemed necessary for 400. He called her generous. He called her kind. He said, "You have no idea what this means to me." She did not think of it as a loan. Not yet. She thought of it as help, the way you help someone you care about. The wire cleared, he said, 3 days later. He said he would pay her back as soon as he could access the funds. There was still a hole, something about international account verification. He'd explain it better later. She told him not to worry about it. She believed him completely. She told no one about the 400. By May, she was talking to Robert for an average of 3 hours a day. Morning messages, afternoon check-ins, long evening conversations where he asked about her day, and she found, to her own mild surprise, that she had more to say than she had expected. He made her feel visible, like her thoughts were interesting, like her life, her quiet, careful life, was worth describing. She started dressing a little better on days she knew she'd be taking photos for him. He asked for photos regularly, nothing inappropriate. He was always respectful about that, just everyday things. Her coffee cup, her cat, the view from her window. She would position things carefully and then feel a small thrill when he responded with warmth. "You made me feel alive again," she wrote to him one night, and then immediately felt embarrassed by it. He said, "That's all I ever wanted, to make you feel that way." In May, he told her about a complication with the contract. There had been an error in the original engineering specifications. Not his fault, but he was named in the dispute. He might have to stay in Scotland longer than expected. Firm was withholding his final payment pending resolution. He was frustrated, but calm about it. He said he'd handled worse. Carol listened, offered what she could, told him it would work out. 2 days later, he asked if she could help again, more than before this time. He needed $2,200 to cover legal fees, just initial retainer. He explained he did it back once the dispute resolved. He had the documentation. He could send it to her if she wanted to see it. He sounded genuinely embarrassed. She did not ask to see the documentation. She sat with the number, 2,200, for longer than she had sat with the 400. She pulled up her bank account and looked at it. She had 74,000. 2,200 was less than 3% of that. And he had been so consistent, so present, so real. She told herself, people who are running a con don't ask for 3%. They ask for everything. She sent the 2,200. June arrived. The contract dispute, he explained, had become more complicated. There were additional legal costs. There was also an issue with his visa, a processing fee that had to be paid directly, not through the firm, for reasons he explained, but she didn't fully follow. He needed 5,500. She felt something shift in her chest when she read that number. Not alarm, exactly. Something smaller, a flicker. She asked, "Is everything okay?" "This seems like a lot." He responded within minutes. He was sorry. He was humiliated to keep asking. He had no one else. His brother in Ohio wasn't speaking to him. His kids were dealing with their own things. He didn't want to burden Carol with this, he truly didn't. But she was the only person he trusted, the only person who knew him, the only person he wanted to come home to. "I want to see you in real life," he wrote. "I think about it every day. I just need to get through this first." She sent the $5,500. Here is what Carol did not know at this point. She did not know that there was no Robert Callahan. Not the one she knew anyway. She did not know that the photographs she had been sent were taken from the public profile of a Norwegian engineer who had no idea his image was being used this way. She did not know that the person sending her messages was likely thousands of miles away, in a country she would never guess, working from a list of women just like her, quiet, careful, recently alone. She did not know any of this, but she had started to wonder, not loudly, quietly, the way you notice a smell before you can identify it. She hadn't said anything yet. She wasn't ready to say anything yet, because saying it out loud would mean something she wasn't prepared for. And so she stayed quiet, and the transfers continued. In late June, the tone changed. Still warm, always warm, but there was a new quality to his messages. A pressure. He was running out of time on the visa. The legal dispute had reached a critical point. His account had been flagged by the Scottish bank for suspicious activity in his funds. All of them, including the money he owed her, were frozen pending review. He needed $12,000, he said. "I've never felt this desperate in my life. I'm ashamed. I know this isn't fair, but I can't lose this case, and I can't lose you. I can't." She read that message 4 times, and she opened her banking app. Shorter sentences now, faster. She had $55,900 left. The earlier transfers had been clean, precise, each one justified. This one felt different. This one felt like a wall she couldn't see past. She typed and deleted responses 3 times. She stared at the ceiling. She thought about Portland. She thought about long walks in bookstores and Sunday mornings. She thought about how long it had been since anyone had called her generous, since anyone had thought about her enough to remember Portland. She transferred $12,000. The acknowledgement came within 7 minutes, warmer than ever. 3 weeks later, he said the frozen account situation had worsened. The Scottish bank required a compliance bond, a financial guarantee that would be returned in full, he promised. The moment the hold lifted, he had the documentation this time. Actual PDFs with official-looking letterhead. He needed $18,000. Carol looked at her account. She had $41,200. Something in her was very quiet by now. Not at peace, just quiet. The way a room gets quiet after a door slams. She wrote, "Robert, I need to ask you something." He responded immediately. "Anything." "Are you really who you say you are?" She had typed it and deleted it twice before she finally sent it. There was a pause, longer than usual, 34 seconds. She counted. Then, "Carol, I understand why you're asking that. I do. After everything I'd asked of you, I'd be asking the same thing. But yes, I am who I say I am. I am the man who has talked to you every single day for 4 months. The man who knows about Biscuit and your sister and the trip to Portland and the audiobook about the woman in the lighthouse that you cried at. I am the man who wants to come home. I am the man who is asking you, one more time, to trust him." She read that message for a long time. She thought, he knows all of that. A stranger wouldn't know all of that. She thought, he said Biscuit's name. She thought, he said the lighthouse book. She sent the $18,000. The last message from Robert Callahan arrived on a Tuesday. It was brief. He said there was one final issue. The bond had cleared. There was a release fee required by the bank, $7,500. After this, everything would be returned. The hold would lift. He would book his flight to Portland. Carol sat at her kitchen table. Her hands were around her coffee cup. She was holding it with both hands, the way you hold something to make sure it stays in your hands. She opened her banking app. She had $23,200. She stared at the number. Her breathing was slow. Her face was very still. She put the phone down, picked it back up, put it down again. Then she did something she hadn't done in 4 months. She called her sister. Her sister called it immediately. She said the word, scam, and Carol went very still on the phone. Her sister kept talking carefully, quickly, the way you talk when you're trying to get the truth across before the person hangs up. She mentioned things she'd read. She mentioned romance fraud. She mentioned the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. She mentioned that Carol wasn't the first. Carol said very little. After she hung up, she sat in her kitchen for a long time. She opened the conversation with Robert. She read it from the beginning, all of it, all 4 months, with the knowledge of what she now knew. It was still the same words. The jokes were still there. The grief about Margaret was still there. Portland was still there. All of it was still there, and none of it was true. She had transferred 38,100. She had started with 74,000. She had 23,200. The rest was gone, not stolen in the night. Sent willingly, said carefully. Sent because she had believed with everything she had that this was real. The scammer never replied again. The profile was gone within 48 hours. The phone number, which she had finally gotten 2 weeks earlier, when she'd insisted, was disconnected. Robert Callahan vanished, because he had never existed. What Carol lost wasn't only the money. She knew that. She would tell you that quietly if you asked her. She lost the mornings, the check-ins, the person who remembered Portland, the feeling of being seen by someone who chose to look. She lost a version of the future she had let herself believe in. That's the part that took the longest to reckon with. She reported it. She filed a complaint with the FBI. She told her bank, which told her what she already knew, that wire transfers are nearly impossible to recover, that the money was likely gone, that these operations are sophisticated and international, and very difficult to prosecute. She told her daughter in Phoenix. She expected something, judgment maybe, or alarm. Her daughter cried instead. Carol didn't cry first. She was past the crying, she thought. It came later, weeks later, unexpectedly, while she was walking around the neighborhood on a morning when the weather allowed it. She stopped on the sidewalk in front of a neighbor's garden. There were tulips, red ones. She stood there for a while, very still. She wasn't thinking about the money. She was thinking about the lighthouse book, about how she had described the ending to him, the way she'd cried at the last page, and how he had said, "That sounds like exactly the kind of ending you deserve to read." She had saved that message. She had read it more than once. And it was composed, calculated, by someone who would never know her name. She started walking again. Carol would tell you, if you asked, that she was not a foolish woman. She would be right. She was an intelligent, careful, self-sufficient woman who had spent decades making thoughtful decisions. She had built 74,000 slowly and deliberately. She had survived a difficult marriage, a quiet divorce, the gradual retreat of a life that had once been fuller. She wasn't looking for a scammer. She was looking for what every person looks for, someone who sees them, someone who stays. The mechanics of this fraud are not complicated. They're patient. They begin with warmth. They build with consistency. They cost nothing until you're already in too deep to leave easily. If you think this could never happen to you, this is exactly how it begins. Not with desperation, not with obvious red flags, with someone who remembers your cat's name, with someone who asks about Portland, with someone who makes you feel for the first time in a long time like you're worth paying attention to. That's the beginning. And by the time you recognize it, you may already be inside it. Romance fraud is the highest grossing category of consumer fraud in the United States. In 2023, Americans reported losing more than 1.1 billion to it. The real number is believed to be several times higher. Most victims never report it. Shame is part of the design. The average age of a victim is not what you'd expect. It's not elderly. It's 50 to 64. People in transition. People in quiet seasons of life. People who are careful with money. People who have every reason to know better and still fall. Because this isn't about intelligence. It's about loneliness. And loneliness doesn't care how smart you are. Carol's $74,000 is gone. The FBI case is open. She does not expect to recover the money. She talks about it now when she can. She says she hopes someone hears it. She says she would trade the embarrassment for one person not sending that first transfer. She says if it helps one person hesitate long enough to make a phone call to their sister, to their daughter, to anyone, that it was worth saying. She still walks the neighborhood in the mornings. She still has biscuit. She still drinks her coffee at 6:47. She just doesn't check her messages the way she used to. This channel exists to document these patterns so you can recognize them, not to judge the people who are caught inside them. If someone is asking you for money, however slowly, however warmly, however real it feels, please talk to someone you trust before you send it. That's all. Just talk to someone first. He knew her cat's name. That was enough.